A new CNN poll out of New Hampshire shows Bernie leading and Biden dropping significantly. So this tweet here from Ryan Nobles of CNN. New CNN poll of likely New Hampshire Democratic primary voters. Sanders in first at 21%, at a +2. Warren down 1 point at 18%. Biden down 9 points to 15%. And Buttigieg holding steady at 10%. And no other candidate in double digits. So New Hampshire is the second voting state in the primary, so it's important to win that state. It would show momentum, especially if you win the first state, Iowa, and then win New Hampshire, then you're really off to the races. In 2016, Bernie won New Hampshire, so he's looking good there right now. But the real story here, and also I'm going to get to how CNN covered this poll, which is a whole other thing. I mean, wait for that. But Biden dropping 9 points here is huge. Now, we've seen other polls as well showing Biden dropping. Biden's still holding steady in first or second or third in most of these polls. But he is slipping. And usually when he goes down, he can't retain what he lost. And that's because a lot of Biden's support is just weak. It's based on name recognition and his attachment to Barack Obama. But when people actually see Biden, whether on the debate stage or being questioned by a reporter or wherever, it's obvious that Biden should not be the nominee and would be disastrous against Donald Trump. I mean, if you're afraid of Donald Trump and you want to defeat Donald Trump, think about how you got Trump to begin with. Joe Biden would just set you up for a new version of Trump, would set you up for a candidate that may even be as evil as Trump, but on top of that, be actually smart. So if you have a Donald Trump that isn't Donald Trump, but someone like him that is as evil as he is, but actually has some intelligence, that's potentially what you would have after 4 years or 8 years of Joe Biden. And there is no way in hell that Joe Biden would last more than 4 years if he became president, though I really don't think he's going to win the nomination. I'm just going to put that out there. But you have to get involved for him not to win. Now, I also want to show you what's happening in Iowa, because it appears Democrats behind the scenes can recognize that Biden is weak. So this from Yahoo News. Joe Biden in danger of humiliating loss in Iowa, says top Democrats. So Biden is not looking good in any of the early states right now. Again, when you look at polling, it seems like he's strong, but he continues to lose. And on top of that, he is not raising as much money as he used to. And he is now, because of that, because he's dropping in polling, because he's not raising enough money, he's now going to try and buy the primary with dark money using a super PAC. So this from Brian Schwartz at NBC. The pro-Biden super PAC, Unite the Country, has been activated. Joe Biden's former communications director, Larry Raske, is leading the effort, the record shows. So when Biden launched his campaign, much like the other candidates in the race, he swore off super PACs because he acknowledged that, money in politics is a problem. But now that he needs the money, all of a sudden, money in politics, just fine, as long as I'm the one getting the money and winning the nomination. I mean, and by the way, swearing off super PACs really isn't that much of a step. Biden was still attending private fundraisers, was still meeting with wealthy donors, corporations. I mean, he was still getting a lot of money from special interests. But a super PAC is just like the next level because it allows people to give to you in a way where it doesn't expose who's giving you the money. And it goes to a super PAC which isn't directly connected to your campaign, even though in a roundabout way it is. So it's a whole other level of taking money and engaging in a corrupt primary race. I mean, this is Biden's last hope right now, is to buy the primary for himself because he is losing otherwise. Now, let me show you some other data points from this poll, from the CNN poll, before I get to how CNN covered the poll, which is just funny. But first here, let me show you highest favorability. So you see Bernie Sanders here has the highest favorables in this CNN poll. Go to the next one. So most important issues. So voters in this poll said healthcare and climate change are the top two most important issues. You go down and look at the other data point here. Who is the best to handle healthcare? Bernie Sanders, by far, is at the top of this poll. And who's the best to handle the climate crisis? Again, Bernie Sanders by far. So the two issues that New Hampshire voters care most about, healthcare and climate change, Bernie Sanders leads on both of those issues, and by huge numbers, by double digits. I mean, this is, if people actually voted, people actually vote this time who they want to vote for, who they actually want to lead the country, Bernie Sanders will win. But this is why it requires volunteers. It requires people to knock on doors. It requires phone banking. It requires small dollar donations. I mean, this is why the Bernie Sanders movement is a people-powered movement. Bernie takes no corporate money. He doesn't have any super PACs. He doesn't have any private fundraisers. All his money comes from small individual donors, mostly small individual donors, averaging, I think now he said, $16 a piece. No other campaign comes close to the numbers that he has. He has the most individual donors by far, over 1 million now. No other candidate has even hit 1 million. He has the most individual donations by far, the most volunteers by far. This is the movement. Now, let me show you how CNN reported on this poll. If you watch my videos, you know how I talk about the media and their obvious bias and ignorance towards Bernie, in that most times they don't even cover him when they do cover him, or if they cover him at all. So journalist for The Intercept, Ryan Grimm, pointed this out on Twitter, and it's hilarious. CNN has 5 headlines about this poll. Not one of them mentions that Bernie Sanders is leading in New Hampshire. 5 headlines. Not one of them mention who is in first in this poll that they are reporting on. Unbelievable. So let me show you the headlines they actually used. This one, Sanders and Warren sit at top in New Hampshire, but there's no clear frontrunner. Oh, really? This one, a disappointing poll for Biden. This one, early state primary voters much more undecided than voters nationally. This one, this is a historically unprecedented New Hampshire mess. And my personal favorite, Buttigieg in 4th, but a strong 4th. That last headline reads like an Onion headline. That reads like a joke. How the editor wrote that and didn't just laugh to themselves. I mean, maybe they did laugh to themselves, because how do you write Buttigieg in 4th, but a strong 4th? It shows you how much they are polling for Pete Buttigieg. And I'll tell you why. They see Joe Biden dropping. They see his support as weak. They don't see him, as the Democratic insiders say, they don't see him winning Iowa. They don't see him winning New Hampshire. They're hitching the ride to Pete Buttigieg here, because Pete Buttigieg is packed with corporate money. He has the most billionaire donors. All Pete Buttigieg does is meet with wealthy donors. That's all he does. So he represents their best interest. He represents the best interests of the corporate media, of the political establishment. So Pete Buttigieg is their second candidate. So Biden's their first for sure. Pete Buttigieg is their backup. So they will do whatever they can to help Pete Buttigieg. I mean, can you imagine if Bernie Sanders is in 4th in a poll and CNN writes a headline, Sanders in 4th, but a strong 4th? That headline would never exist in the history of the world. They don't even put his name in the headline when he's in 1st. So this is just the media coverage, or lack thereof, of Sanders is unprecedented. I have never seen anything like this. I covered in 2016, when I first launched this channel, was in 2016. I covered that race. There was a clear bias, a media bias against Sanders, but they at least acknowledged him for the most part, that he was in the race. Once it hit 2016, 2015, forget about it. They largely ignored him. They thought Bernie had no chance against Hillary. Then Bernie closed what was a 60-point gap between Hillary Clinton, won almost half the states, almost won the primary. So they completely underestimated him. But once he actually gained steam and began to win states, they finally covered him. But you see now, Bernie Sanders has completely changed the conversation around the Democratic Party, has for the good when it comes to, issues like Medicare for all, climate change, student debt. But they almost never acknowledge it. He has the most volunteers, the most individual donors, the most individual donations. They never mention it. He's leading in polls. They don't mention him. And this isn't the first time. This is a consistent thing. If you've seen my other videos, there's been other cases of this. Last week, there was a video where there was a poll done in Iowa where Biden and Warren both lose to Trump in Iowa in this poll. Bernie Sanders, the only one to defeat Trump in Iowa in this poll. The headline on thehill.com was Biden and Warren lose to Trump in Iowa. That was the headline. So even though Bernie Sanders was the only candidate in the Democratic field to actually defeat Trump in Iowa, he wasn't in the headline. This is how you try to suppress a candidacy that has momentum, that has people power behind it. Understand there are different interests at work here. The corporate establishment, the media establishment doesn't want to see Bernie Sanders win because he challenges their wealth and their power. They understand that. Bernie Sanders has been unwavering on these issues. So, I mean, if there's any candidate in this race that will actually change things for the better for the vast majority of Americans, it's Bernie Sanders. And you know that by the way the media treats him. This is just another example of that.